Okay, so since 2020, we've all been spending a lot more time learning online. And let's be honest, a whole lot of it has been, well, kind of boring, right? The big shift to remote learning happened so fast that, student engagement often got lost in the shuffle. But what if it doesn't have to be like that?
I mean, you know that feeling, right? You're staring at a screen, your mind is just wandering off somewhere else during a really flat, uninspired lesson. So, what's the secret sauce? How do you take a passive online course and turn it into something active, something that actually gets you excited to learn? How do you make it work?
Well, to find some answers, we're going to dive into this really fascinating case study. It comes from a university in Brazil that decided to tackle this exact problem head on. So, our story takes us to the Federal University of Santa Maria, or UFSM for short. This whole thing was part of a project they have called Labion, which is all about, making online language learning better through smart research and design. The specific course they were zeroing in on, it was an online English program for their students and also the local community. It was called English Online 3D, or just E3D for short. All right, so before this big redesign, the E3D course had a problem that I think a lot of us can relate to. It was running on the Moodle platform, but the tools were, well, pretty basic. We're talking about the usual suspects, standard forums, wikis, simple quizzes. It worked, sure, but it was totally static. It just wasn't sparking any real interaction or giving students that feeling of autonomy, of being in control. And that was the real challenge, right? It's the same one so many educators face. How in the world do you get students truly engaged and feeling independent when they're not even in the same room? And that brings us to the solution. The team found this incredibly powerful tool that was about to completely change the game for their course. It's called H5P. So what is H5P anyway? Well, it's a free open source plugin that you can pop right into platforms like Moodle. And here's what it does. It lets educators build all this amazing, rich, interactive content directly inside their courses. We are way beyond just text and images here. And this is where the magic really happened. With H5P, the course designers could suddenly do all sorts of cool stuff. They could create interactive videos that, pause and ask you questions. They could make engaging presentations, even games. And get this, they could build branching scenarios. Think of it like a choose-your-own-adventure book, but for learning. The choices a student makes actually determine what happens next. It's the perfect example of moving from just passively sitting there to actively being in the driver's seat of your own learning. But here's a really key insight, and this is important. Amazing online learning isn't just about having flashy, cool tools. It's about having a solid educational philosophy that guides how you actually use them. The team at UFSM, they based their whole redesign on something called the pedagogy of multiliteracies. Now, I know that sounds like a super academic term, but it's actually a simple, really powerful idea. It basically says that in the world we live in today, being literate isn't just about reading and writing words on a page anymore. It's also about understanding and creating meaning with digital stuff, with visuals, and with spoken communication. And this is exactly why it matters so much. The end goal here isn't just about passing a test, right? It's about getting students ready to communicate and participate effectively out in the messy, complex real world. This whole philosophy is captured really nicely in a model they call knowledge processes. And the big idea here is that learning isn't a straight line. It's a cycle. You have students actively experiencing new things, then thinking about what they mean, analyzing them, and finally applying that knowledge in totally new ways. And those interactive tools from H5P, they were the perfect vehicle to bring this whole cycle to life. Okay, so they've got a powerful toolkit and a really smart philosophy behind it, but did it actually work? I mean, that's the million-dollar question, right? To find out, the researchers had to figure out a way to actually measure student motivation. They ended up using a framework called the RCS model of motivation. It's a really simple but super effective way to measure what matters, and it breaks motivation down into 4 key parts. First up is A, for attention. Did the course actually grab their interest and keep it? Then R, for relevance. Did the students see the content as useful for their own goals? Next is C, for confidence. Did they feel like they could actually succeed in the course? And finally, S, for satisfaction. Did they get that sense of accomplishment when they were done? So, the big question. Did the redesigned course actually deliver on these 4 points? The verdict was a clear, resounding yes. The new approach was a huge success. I mean, the results were just fantastic. Let's break it down using that ARCS model. The interactive H5P elements, they totally grabbed the students' attention. The new dynamic activities, they massively boosted satisfaction. Because it was self-paced, it built up student confidence. And since the tasks were so much more creative, the material felt way more relevant. It hit every single mark. ARCS. Perfect. So, what's the big takeaway for all of us? Well, the great thing is, this project didn't just stop at, hey, we got good results. The researchers actually boiled down everything they learned into a set of super practical guidelines that any educator or course designer can use. And we can distill those guidelines down into a few really crucial points. First, think about your toolbox. You've got to choose a platform that actually allows for custom interactive design. Second, you need a compass. Use a philosophy, like multiliteracies, to guide your content creation. Third, give students the steering wheel. Focus on tools that give them more agency and interaction. And finally, think of it as a blueprint. Empower teachers to stop being just lecturers and start being learning designers. When you look at the whole story, the E3D course really proves that fixing boring online learning isn't some big mystery. It's about combining the right tools with the right philosophy to put the student right at the center of their own education. So that leaves all of us with one final question to think about. Whether you're a teacher, a student, or just someone who loves to learn, what's one small interactive change you could make to turn a passive learning experience into an active one?